Hey, hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. I sure am. I've been driving around in my Jeep. It's been a beautiful weather out here in Kentucky, so I can't complain. But got a little extra time here today, waiting on some people, so I thought I'd do some charts. And one thing I noticed that I mean, not noticed, I've been kind of looking at why I think that we're still consolidating in BTC versus doing a primary trend change or an inflection point in the market to where the bulls, I think, still maintain control of the overall trend, even though we've been dropping here in this area of correction and consolidation. So let me show you what I'm looking at, and let me know what you think. I got the daily chart here, Bitcoin versus the dollar. The two moving averages I have on here is the purple 55 and the orange 21 exponential moving averages are here on the daily. Down here, the RSI is the purple line here. I got the average directional index, which is the black line, the red negative directional index line, and the green positive directional index line, all down here. And then I got some labels on here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's what I wanted to kind of look at. Because one thing that I've been looking at, and a couple of people have been talking about a lot, is this 21 exponential moving average possibly crossing down through the 55 here on the daily to give us a bearish crossover signal. And one of the things that I'm looking at to where if this is a little bit of a crossover, I don't think it's going to be that significant like it has been the last couple of times that where it was significant. So let me try to explain myself here. Go back here to the previous high way back when we were hitting close to 20,000. One thing that I kind of look at is on the RSI. I look for divergences, and right here on the one, we had the price come up and hit a high, come back down, come back up again to make a new high. So I got this 1-2 pattern where it makes a higher high. Now, when you look at the RSI down here, at the same time that was making the high here, the one was here, and then the two was lower. So as the price was increasing, the RSI was dropping. So kind of in layman's terms, you could say that there was less buyers to make the new high. So that divergence is a signal that this thing could be turning around. With that divergence there and price started to come down, the 21 exponential moving average crossed down through the 55 right here. So after this crossover happened after the divergence, that's a nice signal of the bears taking over. In other words, that is more of an inflection point in the market. And one thing to help on the internals is when you look down here, the ADX was actually increasing uh, for the bears as it was crossing at that point. So to me, that was a nice signal of an inflection point. Go into November, December timeframe of 18 when we were hitting lows. So kind of flip the mind around here a little bit. I marked 3 on this low. Market comes up, comes back down, and makes a new low. So I marked it 3, 4 to get this lower low. But then when you look at the RSI at the same time, the 3 was making a low here, and then as it made a new low, the RSI didn't make as much of a low. So same thing, divergence. So kind of in layman's terms, again, going the other direction, it was taking less sellers to make a lower low. So that divergence shows that it could be having an inflection point in the market. So we go a little bit further, and then the 21 exponential moving averages crosses up through the 55, and at that time we were getting some internal momentum for the bulls as the ADX was increasing for the positive directional index. At the same time, we were I know you guys have looked at zones with the RSI with me before, but we moved into a zone there. So where are we now? Well, this latest run here that we had up until we got up to about 13.8 or so, there wasn't really any highs in here, but the previous high was at this point right here. And then the higher high here that I marked 5.6. But when you look at the RSI actually made a move along with price. So at this point, even if you move the 5 over to here on this little high right here, Anywhere in here, the RSI was not making divergence like it was back here at 1 and 2, where it was making a lower move as price was making a higher point. So this was actually moving along with price. So to me, this is not a significant divergence enough to where if this 21 exponential crosses down through the 55, we're likely to have a non-event. Because for one, if it does do this, right now the ADX is really low, so there's not a lot of momentum for either side of trend. So we could just get into more consolidation, which will keep this long-term trend sort of in play, or the bulls in control of the primary trend overall. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't drop a little bit further, down into the 9,000, maybe even to 8,500. But we'll have to keep an eye on momentum for that trend as it's going forward. But for now, it keeps continuing to drop to where it's just a signal of consolidation. So I think this crossover at this point right here, if it happens, is going to be a non-event unless some internals start to change. It's sort of along the lines of when this tried to cross over here, and this tried to cross over here. If you drop down into what was happening, when these were crossovers were happening, the ADX was kind of low, and there was just kind of a non-event what was going on. Same point here. It was trying to get up here, and as this crossover was happening, the bears were actually gaining a little bit of control. So there's a little bit of a divergence between what was happening there. So just want to lay out on the daily what I'm looking at. Now, if this was showing a divergence, I'd be all over it and saying this thing's going to have a primary trend change and we're going to work our way to the downside. But I mean, way down to the downside, because it would be a primary trend change. But for now, I think we're just bullish overall. But we're going to consolidate a little bit more, maybe even a little bit lower. So again, I still have my buys in around the 8,500 level. But I've already bought at 9.8. I've already bought at 10.2 during this consolidation to DCA a little bit. But other than that, let's ride this thing out and see what happens. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. Just a quick look of with the RSI and the divergences of what's happening and what's not happening. So peace out. Happy trading.